I don't know about you guys, but my favorite non-Disney classic cartoon feature was The Brave Little Toaster. When I was a kid, I totally thought it was a fun, upbeat story about household appliances that go on adventures and have kind of a weird attachment to their previous owner's kid. But I rewatched it recently, and let me tell you guys, this shiz is dark, yo! From death-seeking appliances to mutilated electronics to automobiles that have accepted their impending death and meaningless existence, I'm Winnie Van Lanningham, and today I'm gonna ruin The Brave Little Toaster. Alright, we're gonna cover this thing scene by scene, breakdown by breakdown, because almost every waking second of this movie is a hellish nightmare. Grab your blankie and hug your toaster, because this is about to get too real too quickly. The Brave Little Toaster came out in 1987, back when writers still trusted children to understand complicated themes and advanced humor. Nowadays, you have ADD bullcrap like Ralph Breaks the Internet, where everything is too bright and too loud and too distrusting of children's intelligence. But back then, kids' movies were made to help children cope with some of the harsher truths about the world. Jerry Reese, the director of Brave Little Toaster, said in a Reddit AMA, quote, "Well, I figured that these characters, as charming as they were dealing with an ominous world. Their fear of being obsolete rings true for all of us at one time or another as well. I asked our voice actors to keep the characters believing their world, never playing it for laughs." And David Newman, in writing the score, tapped into an inherent sadness in being abandoned and seeking reunion. I think all of us making the film took the attitude of being the characters rather than just observing the characters. So, keeping in mind that we're supposed to learn all about the crushing dark realities that come with being your own person in the world, let's get started! Okay, so, the movie opens up by revealing that all of these household appliances have been trapped in an abandoned cabin for at least the last 10 years. What? Not a single appliance thought, hey man, the house is already pretty clean, maybe we should unplug for a while. And I know the radio tries to liven up their chores by playing Tutti Frutti, but honestly, cleaning an empty house top to bottom for a decade is pretty darn bleak. Also, does it creep anybody else out that all of the appliances are obsessed with their human master to the point that they've been single-mindedly devoted to him for the last decade? Good, me too! All the appliances in this movie refer to the little red-headed boy that used to live in the cabin as the master, like he's a weird ritualistic cult leader or a slave-driving control freak who harbors power over all electronic devices. Dude, he's like 5 years old. Isn't that vacuum his mom's? Where's she in all this? Why would a kindergartner get super attached to a vacuum? The blanket is totally understandable and the radio is like, but a toaster? A lamp? How many of you guys remember the exact toaster you had when you were 5? Exactly, it's weird. Also, who the hell is paying this electricity bill? Go-Go Juice for lamps and toasters isn't free, y'all. Is this 5-year-old paying for it? Are his off-screen parents paying for it? Who knows? All I know is 10 years is a really long time to pay for a full team of electronics to meticulously clean your house every day. Next up, we have the #1 most messed up scene from this movie, the one where the AC unit kills himself in a rage. I know for a fact that this scene scarred all of us for life. The air conditioner from the Brave Little Toaster was the OG rage quitter. The other appliances drive him into a manic aggression by reminding him that the master wasn't tall enough to reach him when he still lived at the cottage, and therefore couldn't touch him. This triggers the AC's jealous anger about the fact that he was never loved enough by the master, and he starts having a meltdown about his functionality and literally explodes. First of all, that AC has a killer Jack Nicholson impression. And second of all, what the heck? They just showed a guy losing his mind and blowing his brains out. They even show his lifeless metal corpse dangling in the window. Cause you know that means that Kirby, Lampy, Blanky, Radio, and Toaster just chilled in a room with their friend's dead body just laying around for the rest of the scene. Gross! The most messed up part is when they're all like, damn, homeboy just killed himself. And Kirby's like, whatever, he was a jerk anyways. He literally just killed himself in front of you! How are all of you not freaking out right now? Because the appliances have no idea when to quit, they all decide to make the trek to the city where the master moved with his invisible parents 10 years ago. I have no idea how they figured out where he lived in 1987 without Facebook stalking him, but cartoons don't have to make sense. Of course, as soon as the going gets tough, all of the appliances start to fight and complain just like they did back home. A road trip isn't gonna solve your friendship, guys. They end up in a scary briar patch and decide to take out all their anger on Blanket. Or Blanky. Sorry. Blanket is Michael Jackson's son. No relation. But seriously, they refuse to let him snuggle with them despite the fact that he clearly has the mental acuity of a small child. It breaks my heart. He just wants to cuddle you guys. Let him! He's a little defenseless blankie, and I won't stand for his mistreatment. When they're done bullying that blanket, the appliances set off again without even remotely discussing the giant fight they got into last night, cause that's healthy. Luckily, the gang happens upon a meadow, which is probably a gigantic relief after being trapped in a musty cabin and then forced to sleep in a gigantic thorn bush. All the little creatures start falling in love with their own reflections on Toaster's shiny surface, but Homegirl is not having it. After fleeing all those goddamn narcissist animals, she hides in a small clearing with a little yellow flower that immediately falls in love with her. Instead of just not being a jerkwad, Toaster flees the flower's little cove and spies on it from behind a bush. To my shock and horror, the sociopathic little Toaster watches the flower wilt and die in front of her eyes and does nothing. How is that a lesson that little kids should be learning? Is fleeing a corpse always a good thing? This is twice now. Jesus, we're only 30 minutes into this movie. How much more could there possibly be? Turns out a buttload. Like this scene where Lampy gets mad jealous of Toaster and Blanky snuggling. Why? Are toasters not allowed to show basic human decency towards blankets in this universe? Why is everyone picking on Blanky so hard? He's just a cute little guy who keeps you warm and is trying to find the boy who loved him. Lampy spends like several minutes arguing with Toaster about whether or not they should be nice to the blanket, and Toaster finally has to explain to Lampy that doing things for other people makes you feel good inside. I swear to God, every character in this movie is an emotionless sociopath. What happens next is the kind of nightmare fuel that followed me well into my late 20s. This scene even scared me when I watched it again as an adult. I don't know why 80s and 90s dream sequences were so goddamn terrifying, but here we are. Toaster has a dream that she's back in the kitchen with the master again, but it turns into a nightmare real quick when the master forgets to pull his toast out of the toaster. The whole kitchen goes up in flames, and a giant creepy fire clown shows up to try to murder Toaster. The clown tries spraying her with water, stabbing her with forks, and dangling her above a full bathtub where she could fall to her death at any second. Okay, let's unpack this. That's super dark for a kid's movie. You know how human beings commit suicide by dropping their toaster into the bathtub? That last part of the nightmare was based on that. Obviously, the fall into the bathtub would fry and kill her immediately, so this nightmare must have been real AF for the Toaster. When Toaster wakes up, everything is bright and happy and back to normal. Nah, I'm just messing with you. Everything still sucks. Toaster and her friends wake up to a crazy storm that carries Blanky high into the treetops and fries their generator. Instead of running to find shelter from the rainfall that will surely drown all their electrical parts, Lampy decides to sacrifice himself to turn the generator back on. In a hella Thor Ragnarok move, Lampy plugs himself in and waits for lightning to strike. He's immediately struck by a giant bolt of electricity that beats him up, tortures him, and even breaks his light bulb. If the AC couldn't handle a panic attack without dying, I have no idea how Lampy survived this. Homeboy should definitely be dead. It was a suicide mission to begin with. Screw the generator, dude, save yourself. You can't help your friends find the master if you're dead. It's like, Jesus, do any of these characters actually want to live? Because it's really starting to feel like none of them want to live. Anyways, they obviously revive Lampy and rescue Blanky from the tree. But then Kirby the vacuum cleaner has an actual freaking stroke, and I completely give up any hope that these characters will survive to see that goddamn kid again. I don't know if he finally short-circuited because of all the rain, or if Kirby's just at that age where massive blood clots are starting to form in his brain, but this vacuum cleaner is not okay in any capacity. He is literally having a seizure and almost chokes on his own power cord. But to be fair, it does make sense. I'm pretty sure my vacuum cleaner would have an epileptic fit if I used it every single day for 10 years in a row, then forced it to go hiking with me for like a week. Of course, the other characters revive him, but seconds later, they immediately fall off a giant cliff into a waterfall. I don't know, guys. Darwin Awards. 3 minutes ago, the Toaster was having night terrors about falling into a bathtub, and now he's losing his balance on the edge of Niagara Falls. I know they're just household objects, but grow a brain. Kirby, of course, having just recovered from a major medical crisis, jumps in after his friends to save them, but ends up waterlogging his system and physically disabling himself. Toaster, Lampy, Radio, and Blanky end up having to drag him through the woods by his power cords because he lost literally all of his motor functions. He trips over a root and falls sideways into a swamp, and the rest of the appliances fall in after him. In a scene that I can only assume Toy Story 3 stole from, each of the appliances become instantly very zen and chill about their impending death. Blanky even warbles, "I'm not scared," as he's sinking deeper into the swamp with his comrades. My God, this is bleak. How is accepting your own death a life skill that children need to have? Maybe unlike the 1800s when nobody lived past 13, but this was the 80s! You weren't gonna die unless you go-go dance too hard at an Oingo Boingo concert. Thank God this is a kid's movie, because right as Radio's antenna is disappearing into the murk, an electronic repair guy who happens to be taking an afternoon stroll through the woods finds the appliances and pulls them out of the swamp. At first you're like, why is this tubby, nerdy dude looking to score electronics in the middle of a bog? Why is he driving a monster truck? But it becomes abundantly clear when Elmo St. Peters takes the gang back to his chop shop that he's basically the grown-up version of Sid from Toy Story. I'm not gonna lie to you, there's something psychologically wrong with this human. First, he puts the terrified, anthropomorphized blender in a vise, squeezes it till it bends, rips out its pluggy, and stabs it with a screwdriver. Then he laughs like a psychopath as he cuts the blender's cords, drips its lifeblood all over the place, puts the motor in a box, and sells it to a customer for a whopping $5.95. The worst part is, all of those toys totally saw that serial killer murdering their friend and couldn't do anything about it. The rest of the appliances in the chop shop know what's up, and decide to sing a super creepy villain song to show the gang how it is around here. In the middle of their nightmare song, a jacked up mutilated piece of machinery lowers down in front of Toaster and friends and has a total meltdown. She shows them that she's a can opener, a lamp, and a shaver, which sounds useful but is actually super horrifying if you think about what an insane identity crisis that must have been for her. At the end of her bit, she legit dies on stage and has to be hoisted out of there by some long black cables that look like the arms of death. Dope! As Elmo gears up to do the same to Radio, the other appliances band together to scare the crap out of him and rescue their friend. Of course, this victory is very short-lived because almost nothing goes right for these characters in a full 90 minutes. They arrive at the master's house, whose name turns out to be Rob, and are greeted by a group of hostile high-tech electronics. Of course, these guys have already heard Rob talk all about how he wants to go back to the cabin and get his old appliances, but they too have the same cult worship of the master, and they refuse to lose him to a bunch of outdated home goods. They sing Toaster and Company a groovy 80s tune about how brand new and awesome they are, and then one by one push each member of the entourage out a very high apartment window into a dumpster. God damn it, cutting edge technology! Maybe get new appliances but keep the old! One is silver and the other's gold! Didn't they teach you guys empathy? Or are you too high-tech and fancy for feelings now? Wow, I'm taking sides in a war between electronic devices. I think I'm losing it. Yeah, I'm definitely losing it. After the gang is thrown into the literal trash, they're taken to Ernie's disposal, a grody dump with one of those giant machines that squishes cars into tiny cubes of steel. This is the second most depressing scene of all. The cars that keep getting squished by the squisher thing start singing this crazy existentially depressing song called Worthless about, you guessed it, how truly worthless they all are. What the F? How is this supposed to help children? Okay kids, you might think you're an alright 6-year-old now, but trust me, 20 years, you're gonna be broke and miserable and recently cheated on by your ex-boyfriend. You're gonna feel exactly how this song says you're gonna feel. Is that why I hate myself now? Did I listen to this song enough to actually lower my self-esteem? Nah, my dad probably did that, but that's a conversation for my therapist. Anyways, all the cars start singing about how they deserve to die and start getting squished one by one. At this point, the kill count in this movie is way too high for me to keep track of, and the amount of death these appliances have to see in a relatively short time span is astounding. In a final act of defiance, one car actually launches himself onto the conveyor belt towards his immediate death, instead of waiting to be selected by the giant magnet god who doesn't care if you live or die. That's the kind of stuff we're working with, people! A 4-minute song about how none of them are worthy of taking another breath on this earth. When that incredibly dismal song is done infecting your brain hole with sorrow, Rob and his hot girlfriend show up to look for some electronics in a trash yard. Now I'm starting to get why they keep calling him Master. This dork is dedicated to his electronics. But wait, the cruel magnet overlord picks everyone up and drops them on the conveyor belt. The master notices Blanky lying on the conveyor belt, hugs him like an old friend, and ends up finding the rest of his appliances not far away between some garbage heaps. Of course, Nothing in this weird toaster universe ever has permission to just be okay. So Rob gets sucked up into the magnet with all of his homies. This is when stuff gets scary, y'all. The whole screen turns blood red, and Rob almost loses his hand to the chompy thing with the squish. But just in time, Toaster throws herself into the gear wheels of the thingy and saves him. Honestly, there's zero way that a toaster could survive that, but that's cartoons for ya. Obviously, this movie is rated G. Wait, this movie is rated G? How? What? Why? Whatever. I guess it's rated G, so the story has to end somewhere positive. The old appliances get to go to college with Rob and Chris, and Rob's mystery mom gets to keep all the brand new stuff. That's it. The happy ending is that Rob is a weirdo who has an attachment disorder to his former household appliances, and Toaster and friends are equally codependent with an added dose of suicidal tendencies and really bad luck. Yay! I guess? Did I miss any of the most messed up parts of the brave little toaster? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to click to the left of my face for more videos. Like and subscribe to NerdWire, and I'll be back next week to ruin your childhood.